I'm Peter Christoph. I'm from Lancaster. I'm a bird photographer. Okay. So what I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to show you bird photographs that I took, and I'm going to explain to you how I took the photographs, and I'm going to share with you the locations that I photographed these birds at, so that you can go and photograph the same birds. They're all taken here in Massachusetts. So I'm not going to show you exotic birds and taken in other lands that you will never be able to photograph yourself. These are all things that you can do yourself. This is a very interactive show. As I go along, if you have any questions, just go ahead and ask. Before I begin, how many people here are birders? Good, a lot of you. How many people are photographers? Some of you are both. I am a bird photographer, and I'm not a birder, although I wish I was. A birder is someone who can probably identify the call of a bird. And I can't do all that, but I'm working on it. So I suggest if you're going to become a bird photographer, the best way is to start out as a birder and then learn photography. That's not what I did, but that's the best way, because then you already know where to find the birds and all that kind of stuff. So let's begin. The first picture I'm going to show you was not taken in Massachusetts. This is the exception. Every other picture was. But I took a trip down to the Everglades, and I came up with this picture of the osprey catching a fish, which is revered by sports fishermen all over the world. It's a Jack McCall, or McCall Jack. And very hard for a human to catch, very easy for an osprey to catch. He just skims over the surface of the water and he sees the fish maybe a foot down below, and he picks it up and he catches it. So he caught this creval jack, that's what it's called, creval jack. Now we're going to go back to our story. And people ask me, what does it take to be a bird photographer? It takes a lot of patience. I'm not going to show you all the pictures that I didn't get, but I spend hours and hours out in the swamps and the forest looking for birds, and I only show you the ones that I get. But there's a lot of hours spent not getting anything. It's good to have a network of friends. You share with your friends where you saw the birds. They share with you where they saw the birds. It's also good to join some Facebook bird groups. You'll meet friends there, and you can see people posting bird pictures, and often they will tell you where they photograph them, most of the time. It's good to have a technical knowledge of your gear. This guy is a friend of mine. He's got a 600 millimeter lens, but more importantly, he knows how to use it. He knows how to use all of its settings. I recommend to people that you are able to use your camera in the complete darkness. Not that you would take a picture in the complete darkness, but you should be so familiar with it that you're not trying to learn any of the controls when you're out there shooting the eagle catching the fish, because that's not the time to do it. Now, I sometimes am taking pictures when it's early morning or starting to get sunset, and sometimes it is kind of dark and it's hard to read the dials, but I know where everything is. I've memorized all the controls. So it's a good habit to establish. The proper camera gear for shooting birds, you want to have a nice long zoom lens so that you can get closer to the bird. And we'll get into that in a second. This is the picture of an eagle taken at the Wachusett Reservoir on his nest. He was about 600 feet out. A friend of mine took me there. He was the one who got me interested in bird photography. And I got this picture of the eagle, but I didn't have good equipment at the time, so I had to zoom in my computer afterwards. And this picture is very pixelated and grainy. It's not very sharp, even though I like the picture of the eagle. With better equipment, you get a picture like this. All your pictures will be sharp if you have a nice long zoom lens. Better quality lens. So you can either have money or you can have camera gear. You can't have both.
You might not send your kid to college, but that's okay.
Right. So I have good camera gear, and I enjoy it. Having a long lens means that you can get closer to the subject without scaring it away. And examples of a long lens would be a 500, a 400, or 300 millimeter. Now, I have friends who have 600 millimeter and 800 millimeter, but that's beyond my price range, and they're a lot heavier. A 500 millimeter is one that a lot of bird photographers use, and it's more affordable. So with a 500 millimeter, you can get a picture of the bluebird like this up close instead of like that. This is a female bluebird. With a 200 millimeter lens, you could get a picture like this of the swallows flying over the water. But with a 500 millimeter, it comes up much closer. So it's worth the money to invest in a better zoom lens. When you're purchasing a camera, if you haven't got one, pay attention to the frame rate. If you can take a lot more pictures in 1 second, you have a lot more keepers. Especially when it comes to birds in flight like this. This is 4 shots. Supposing that, let me check the focus on this. Okay. Supposing you like this shot right here, or you like that shot. Well, if you had something that was doing 4 frames a second instead of 8 frames a second, you might only get this shot and that shot. So it's very important when you're shooting birds in flight to have a high frame rate. So look at that when you're purchasing a camera.
May I ask, was that the same bird?
Yes. Yeah, that's 4 exposures put together in the computer.
Is this all digital?
Yes. I've been shooting digital since 1999. What people ask me, what is the camera settings that I use when I shoot birds? And I typically shoot at f8. At f8, you can get most of the bird in focus. If you go down to like f4, you might only get his face in focus, but not the whole bird. If you go up to f16, something like that, you'll always get the bird in focus, but you'll be shooting at a much slower shutter speed if you're shooting at f16. And I like to shoot at ISO 100 to 800 using my camera. If you go higher than that, you start to get grain and noise into the picture. And I like to shoot at aperture priority. I shoot aperture priority 99% of the time. That means that if you set your aperture like to f8, your camera will determine your shutter speed. That way you're not having to figure out anything when you're taking your picture. You don't want to be doing any math or calculating. You just want to be taking the picture. So all my bird pictures are taken at aperture priority, and the camera determines the shutter speed. You hope for a lot of light. You hope for sunny days because you can have faster shutter speeds. An ideal setting would be f8, ISO 200, and 1/2000th of a second. At 1/2000th of a second, you can freeze any bird in flight. This will happen on a sunny day. It probably won't happen on a cloudy day. You might end up shooting at 1/750th of a second on a cloudy day.
What kind of bird is that?
This is an osprey. Osprey's coming right at me. Notice his wingtips are sharp. The whole bird is sharp. That's because he was coming right at me and he's perpendicular to the camera. So whenever you see a bird that's coming at you perpendicular, take a lot of pictures. If he starts to go like this, and some of the wingtips are farther away and some of the wingtips are closer to you, you might have some of them start to go out of focus. So a shot like this is good for getting the whole bird sharp.
Makes me feel like I can feel what the bird is feeling. So, you know.
Don't you feel like he's about to get you though?
Yeah.
You feel like he's about to get you?
Yeah, he's saying move.
He's coming right at me. Actually, he was...
I know he has to do his stretching exercises every
Is he
day.
coming right over your head?
Yes, he was probably about 100 feet up. With this zoom lens, it makes him look a lot closer than he really is. I wasn't worried about him. But it does look like he's about to hit me. Exactly. That's what I'm hoping. I mean, he doesn't want to fight with me because I'm big
He
and...
already has food. He already
Right, yeah. When you're taking bird photographs, it's good to look for active birds, birds that are doing something like hunting, flying, like before, eating, catching a fish or whatever they eat, and fighting with each other. Sometimes birds like to have territorial displays. They don't actually hit each other that way, but they display their wingtips. They display their wings, and they put on a show. So this is not a very interesting picture. It's just an osprey sitting on a nest that anybody can take. It's better to wait for some action. Here he has caught his fish. This is twice as good as the other picture. So
Where was this?
this was taken at the a swamp along Route 2 in Boxborough, which is from you guys northwest,
Yeah, no, we know.
near 495 and Route 2.
Yeah,
So not that far away, right?
right now.
Okay. There used to be a heron rookery there years ago. You could see them from the side of Route 2. The herons kind of flew off to another place,
Yeah.
but one of the short trees was taken over and an osprey built a nest there
Oh,
at that swamp that you can get to if you go around to the back of the swamp. Another bird being active. This snowy owl is on the hunt. He's about to catch a mouse in the snow. Here's a bird being active.
oh my
The great blue heron is eating the fish. This is the first picture I ever took of a great blue heron. I chased after great blue herons for quite a while when I was starting out. They're a very elusive bird, even though you can see them a lot. When you approach them, they fly away. They don't seem to like humans. So I found this one at Great Meadows in Concord. Early in the morning, I saw him, and he was catching his fish. So the very first shot I got of a great blue heron happened to be catching a fish, and it made me decide to become a bird photographer because of this photo.
What is, I was just gonna ask, are those injured feathers on what I would call a shoulder, or is that?
Nope, those are part of his markings
They are.
that you'll see on every great blue heron.
Yeah, you know, and I never get close enough to see them, so thank you.
I met a guy at Great Meadows, and he told me if I go out to a certain spot, there's a great blue heron there that has this brown patch on his shoulder, as if it was something wrong with it. And there isn't anything wrong with it. They all have that patch there. These great blue herons are at Muddy Pond in Sterling. This one just came in for landing, and he saw him coming in, so he's puffing himself up really big. That's how they have their territorial displays, until one of them will fly off. This one decided he would fly off afterwards because this guy was bigger, and it was his territory.
Are you shooting everything autofocus, or do you manually focus?
Autofocus 99% of the time, yep. So I have very little that I have to think about when I'm shooting the picture.
Just point and shoot.
Yeah, it's just point and shoot.
What kind of camera do you use?
I have a Canon 7D, not to be confused with a 70D, but a 7D. And I like it because I can shoot 7 or 8 frames per second with it. And it also has a 1.6 crop factor, so the pictures I take are actually bigger than you would get on a full frame camera. Composition is important when you're shooting birds. This bird doesn't have a lot of space around him, so he feels like he's caged in, literally, like he was in a box. So this is not a good picture. It's better to have space in front of and around the bird. Here's the same, not the same goose, but here's a goose, and he's got space around him, and you always want to have space in front of where the bird is flying to, looking to, or running to. Same with a person or a car driving along. You want to have space on this side here. It's a good rule of composition.
What does it do, draw your
Wow.
eye?
Well, you want to know where the bird is flying to,
You do, just
Yeah.
automatically.
not where he has been, but where he's going. This is another composition rule.
That's beautiful.
The photographers have this rule of thirds. You want to put a subject in, if you do this into a tic-tac-toe board, like that, and it would cross right about there, and that's where the subject is. So this follows the rule of thirds, and there's a lot of space in front of the heron where he's looking at.
Where was that taken?
This was taken in Clinton, Massachusetts.
Oh.
There's a Wachusett Reservoir that goes out, the spillway comes out of the reservoir and goes down a little bit, and then there's a big waterfall underneath Route 70 that you cannot ever see because you're driving over it.
Oh, yeah.
Right up above here is the road. But if you go around down to the Weetabix factory, you can park where it says don't park and employee parking, and you can walk.
Does it smell good over there?
It smells good, yeah.
Yeah, the Weetabix factory smells great.
You can walk right over to this waterfall, and quite often there'll be a great blue heron fishing or a cormorant. So this is a twofer photo. It's a landscape, it's a waterfall, and a great blue heron at the same time.
Looks
What
like black
color
and white.
was the water, actually? Did you change the color?
There wasn't much going on. So that's why I decided to make it a black and white, because it was very drab. And the great blue heron isn't that colorful anyway. He's kind of slate colored.
Except for his little brown patch.
Yeah, except for that little patch right there.
There he is.
See, he has the same one as the other guy.
Yeah, maybe they're brothers.
Right.
And it's interesting because we see so much in color that when you see black and white, it really pops.
Yep.
Amazing, yeah.
When you're approaching a bird for a photograph, use common sense and walk slowly towards the bird. And don't make any sudden movements. Even if you're taking your camera out of the bag and you're setting up your tripod, that's going to scare the bird away. So if you think you're about to come upon a bird, set your tripod up, set the camera on it, turn the camera on, have all the controls ready before you start approaching the bird. And stay low to the ground. If you stay low to the ground, you are not as much of a threat to the bird as if you were walking, because the bird sees me now as a human. If I'm down here like this, I could be another animal foraging for food. And especially they don't like seeing your eyes. Birds are, instinct says, I see something with 2 eyes that's coming after me. So hide your eyes from the bird too, don't look right at it. Look off to the side or or look down and put your hat over your head. Then you won't scare off the bird.
Wow. Thank you. That's good
That's
information
good
for
information
birders.
just to look.
Yeah.
I learned that at a bird photography talk at Wachusett Meadows about 6 years ago. Someone else told me that, and it works. They also said to walk in a zigzag towards the bird, like this. So the bird doesn't really think you're coming at him.
Oh.
Everybody else thinks you're drunk, but the bird doesn't think that you bother him. So when I get down low, I'm laying in the mud. This was at Muddy Pond. Good, good name for it.
Muddy?
It was very muddy. During the during August, the water dries up almost completely, and this is all mud. But it feels good on a hot day.
Did a bird take that picture?
A bird did, yes.
And you observed the one-third
Is that your
one-third.
500?
Yes.
Now, is that camouflage on the camera?
Yeah, it works, doesn't it? I mean, you didn't even see it. You didn't see that, did you?
No, we were wondering what you were using, and we couldn't see it.
It is camouflage. It's actually like a protective neoprene coating so the camera doesn't get scratched. And also, if you're trying to hide in the bushes from a bird, it's less likely to see you. I think the bird probably saw me there. But since I'm laying down in the mud, the birds don't see me as a threat. So I can get a lot of pictures up close of the birds. They'll actually approach you if you're laying down. And I don't want to take the credit for inventing laying down in the mud, because this guy, he was at Muddy Pond, and I watched him crawling along in the mud. So I got the idea from him, and I tried it.
Is his name Chris?
What's that?
Is his first name Chris?
It could be. He's from Boston. You know? You know?
Looks like
It looks like
from
someone we
Natick.
know, but he's from Natick or Framingham.
Yeah, he could be from Natick or Framingham.
Brizia? Chris Brizia?
I don't. I only met him that one time, and he was out there with.
Well, he's a Red Sox fan, so we like him.
He was out there with a buddy of his from Boston, and interestingly, his buddy is a pretty well-known birder, and he took off in January of this year to do a big year. Some of you have seen the movie The Big Year, where you go out and find as many birds as you can in 1 year.
Yeah.
Right.
So his buddy is out there right now, going across America on a bicycle,
Wow.
because he wanted to do a green big year
Wow.
to see how many birds he could see on a bicycle without spending any fuel. So.
Wow.
I hope he's okay.
Yeah, I know. Well, he started off on January 1 in the middle of the snowstorm.
Oh, my God.
It was terrible snow.
Hope he went south.
Well, he started right in Salisbury, or he's from that area, so he started in Salisbury in the snowstorm. Of course, the first bird he saw was a snowy owl, and it was chasing a short-eared owl, so those were his first two birds.
Wow.
This guy looks like he could be,
So when you're down low, crawling in the mud or crawling on your stomach, you can get pictures like this of the bird's eye view.
what is that?
This is a killdeer. And when you're shooting at a bird's eye view, you put the viewer in the same place as the bird, so it has much more impact as a photo.
Oh, yeah.
Again, I was laying in the mud at Muddy Pond, and the juvenile green heron didn't mind me at all. He continued eating his fish. Another way to find birds is to listen for their call. The birders here in the room know that that's the first way you find a bird. And then you can, if you hear the cardinal singing, you know to look up for a cardinal, not to look around for a blue jay or a robin. So right away you've narrowed it down what you're looking for. And you can call or whistle for a bird. I know people who can imitate bird calls really well just with their voice, almost as if they were a bird themselves.
A lot of birders are excellent with their ears, and
They are.
also know the habitats and the behaviors of the bird.
Right.
Might not even see it, but knows that it's there.
So that's how I got this picture of this red-bellied woodpecker.
Oh,
I was at Bolton Flats in Lancaster, where a lot of birders go, and I had been hearing the red-bellied woodpecker for a couple days. I didn't see him. And then one day I was walking down the path, I heard him and looked up, and he was on the tree, so he also gave his nest site away, because he happened to be on his nest. Why is it called the red-bellied
Yeah.
woodpecker? Red-headed woodpecker was already taken. There is another bird whose head is completely red or maroon.
Yes.
So they said, well, there's a tiny, tiny, tiny patch of red there, so they called them the red-bellied. I don't know why.
in my backyard in Milford, I see 3 different kinds of woodpeckers every day.
Yeah, a lot of places have 3 or 4 or 5 different woodpeckers if there's a lot of habitat for them. I found this bird by listening to its call. This is a young turkey taken at the Oxbow National Wildlife Refuge in Shirley, Massachusetts. Remember when the government shut down back 6 months ago?
Yeah.
I went to the Oxbow. I had never been to that one. And there was nobody there because the government was shut down. So I drove the 2 miles in where it said you cannot drive, have to park your car. Who's going to stop me? They're all shut down. So I took advantage of it, and I went down the road, and I was driving along, and I heard the turkeys up in the tree. So he gave himself away, which was good because I wouldn't have seen him up there. He has almost the same kind of texture as the tree branch. He blends in pretty well, just by listening for his call. The osprey I also photographed because of the call. I was at the going to the osprey nest on Route 2. The osprey might come in about every half an hour. They go fishing, then they might come back about every half an hour. So I was setting up with my daughter, getting ready to wait, and I heard him coming in. Or my daughter actually heard him coming in. He screeched or screamed. So he alerted me to the fact that he was coming in. A lot of birds will do that. And I was able to get this shot as he approached the nest.
What, is that a strategy he had, or just?
To call?
To call. And
It doesn't, not a good strategy, but
there must be a reason in nature.
Probably warning people to get out of the way.
in that case, he was probably yelling at me for being there, because ospreys don't like you around the nest. But it's interesting when you hear red-tailed hawks with their screech up in the sky. I would think that would send all the chipmunks running. But they do it.
That's why, and then they go boom, and there you are.
I don't know.
Because otherwise they were hiding.
They do it.
Best
I,
place
I can't figure that out.
to see birds is in a place where they're building something.
So when you're taking photographs of birds, it's good to avoid distractions. You want to have the picture be all about the bird, not a piece of seaweed. So how do you get distracting elements out of the photograph? There's a couple different ways. You can walk around it. If the bird's there and the seaweed's in front of you, just walk over to this side and shoot the bird, or wait until the bird moves a little bit. But you get a much better picture if you get just the bird like this. No seaweed.
What kind of bird is that?
This is a piping plover, and you can find these at
Cape Cod.
Plum Island, and a lot of
Yeah.
different
I was
places.
gonna say,
Where they say, don't walk,
Right.
don't go over there, and let's cut.
When I was a kid, you could go swimming during the summer at Plum Island. Now you can't because the piping plovers are nesting there.
Yeah, they only have one of the beaches.
So this picture with the distraction compared to this one is much better because it also has it shows the ocean behind him. It shows him in his habitat, the sand in the ocean. It's better to avoid clutter in a photograph. This photograph is cluttered up with the branches in front. If you have branches in the background, that's also clutter. So I was at a place in Concord, on Dover Road to be exact. I found a swamp using Google Earth. I wanted to go find a pileated woodpecker nest. I was almost to the nest when I came to the red-tailed hawk sitting on the branch. The red-tailed hawk had just eaten. If a bird has just eaten, he's content and he's not necessarily going to fly away, so you have time to photograph him, or if he's on the hunt. So since this bird had just eaten, I was able to walk around to the other side and get a much better picture than I did from here.
Oh my goodness.
This one has no distractions in it.
Did you see him eating something?
Yeah, he had just finished eating something, so I knew that he would be staying there.
God, that's magnificent.
So if you see a bird eating something, you know you have time to take out your camera and get all your settings right and take quite a few pictures. When I go photographing, I like to avoid groups. If you're going with a group of people, you're going to have a lot more noise than if you're going by yourself. And if there's a lot more noise and activity going on, a lot of birds will leave the area. So if you do go out and you want a picture like this, you can come home with a picture like this. But
That's very good.
Very, I like that one a lot.
Bird was that?
so when I go photographing birds, I like to photograph by myself 98% of the time, unless I'm leading a bird group and taking people on a workshop. I don't usually count on getting prize-winning photos at that time. I like to go by myself. So here I am by myself. I took a selfie with my phone. And I'm at a heron rookery in North Andover that I found about 2 years ago. You can see the heron nest in the background. This is a beautiful place to go in North Andover. It's next to a soccer field called the Carter Fields, and you can park right there and walk behind the soccer field on a very dry path, and you can actually be on a platform. This is the easiest of all places to go to photograph herons. You're not even having to walk in the mud or crawl on your stomach. And the herons will fish sometimes right out here in the water. And then up here you can see them building their nest during nest building time.
I'm gonna ask another dumb question. You said this is a selfie?
Selfie.
Yeah, I know what you took
On-
a picture of yourself.
On the railing behind me, I put my cell phone and I just
Ah,
took a picture of myself.
Oh,
Yeah.
he's good. He's good.
Yeah. Right. If you're going to wear camouflage, see how good it works? Nobody can see me, right? You can see me. But you really look cool when you wear camouflage, so that's why I wear it. It does actually work. I have been in situations where I'm along the edge of a swamp and I'm kind of hidden in the brush because I'm trying to photograph something. I'm trying to stay out of the way. And I've had, on 2 occasions, a great blue heron fly right over to where I was. Great blue heron did not see me. At the last minute, he saw me and he banked a sharp right after he realized I was there. So sometimes the camouflage will work. If you're blending into the forest already, it's definitely going to help you if you have camouflage or neutral colored clothes on, like green or brown. Just don't wear bright orange or something like that.
Sweet. Oh
I photographed this bird when I was alone at Salisbury Beach. Now, if any of you who've gone to look at snowy owls this winter down at the ocean, you know there's mobs of people there. And you're not going to get really good shots. You're not going to have one-on-one time with the owl. But in this day, I did. I had one-on-one time with the owl. And I was able to photograph him for about 2 hours. And when he decided to fly, he flew towards me, and I was lucky. Often when they fly away from you like most birds do.
What time of day is this?
This is about 10 o'clock in the morning.
10 o'clock?
Yeah. With most birds, I like to go out and photograph them in the morning, because that's when the birds are active. But the snowy owls are around all day long. So you can photograph them from morning
You're at the
till night.
beach.
At the beach.
I'm at the beach. I never see birds at the, snowy owls at the.
Were you there in January, February?
No, but I have.
Yeah.
been, but you'll have to
It's
tell
the same beach. Go to Salisbury Beach
me. Okay.
and look for the snowy owls this winter. They were there last winter a lot, and they might be back this
That
winter.
particular time of day better than others?
All day long for the snowy owls.
Not nocturnal.
This is a poor picture because the lighting is not behind me. It's on the other side of the osprey, so it's like a silhouette. You want to avoid having the sun on the other side. It's better to have the sun behind you so it's shining on the bird. So this osprey picture is not good. I came back another time, shot the same osprey in better lighting conditions. I have a much better photograph. So something like this, you can go back and shoot it another time if it's local to the area. Don't just take one shot of it and be happy with it. Go back until you get the best light. Best time to shoot, if you're a birder, you already know, and that is in the early morning. That's when birds are the most active, because they've been sleeping all through the night and they're hungry, and their little babies are hungry, so they're going to go out, feed in the morning. This was shot in the morning, about 7 o'clock in the morning at Plum Island. It's a yellow warbler, and this was shot at the Hellcat Tower, but you can find them all over the place at Plum Island or anywhere just about during the migration right around May 10. I met an elderly gentleman there who had a 600 millimeter lens. It was bigger than mine and heavier than mine, but he was smart. He wasn't carrying it around with him. He was planted next to the outhouse, and he just waited for the birds to come to him, which is a good concept to follow. Every year he goes to Plum Island around that time, and he takes a lot of pictures right there next to the outhouse. He has a whole collection he calls his outhouse birds. The outhouse is over here, but all the birds land in the tree as they migrate through. So he gets a lot of wonderful pictures, and I was able to get this one as I was standing next to him. This was taken in the morning. This is the same bird that you saw earlier. He's got the fish. This one is just about the picture of the fish. You could say, I'll put this into the fishing category as well. Has nice detail on the fish.
Another poor bird that's injured on his swing there.
Yeah. So he held the fish up for me. How long was it until he caught the fish, until he swallowed it? 7 seconds.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sometimes they catch it and it's gone. Sometimes they'll play with it for half an hour. I've seen both kinds. But this one here, it was done and over in 7 seconds, and I got about 7 pictures of it when I started firing. If I didn't... Pickerel, yeah.
Look at the water drop. Yeah, it's beautiful.
So go early in the morning, and if you want to see a lot of birds, go during migration season. They have a spring and a fall migration. Fall migration is, some birds are migrating now, but the spring migration is the best. Why is it the best? Because the birds have their full breeding plumage on. They want to attract a mate. So all the birds are very colorful. During the fall, as they're migrating the other way, they're not as colorful. This was taken in the spring of the yellow warbler. And he was photographed at Plum Island. The places I like to go for migration are Plum Island and Bolton Flats in Lancaster and the Mount Auburn Cemetery in Cambridge. If you go to one of those places, you will find a lot of birds. You can find about 70 birds here, or about 75 different species there if you know what you're looking at. This was taken as cedar waxwings migrated through during the wintertime. And there is a crabapple tree at the end of my driveway, so I didn't have to travel very far. And the cedar waxwings came, a whole flock of them. So it's important to pay attention to migration season. Look at the little red wax wingtips. That's how he gets his name, from the red wax wingtips right there. I'm not a birder, so when I first took this photograph and I saw it in my viewfinder in the camera, I thought the bird had cut itself and it had blood on its wings. It wasn't until I looked closer I saw this, and I had to look up on the internet and find out what happened to the bird. And I found out that's normal. In the adults will have the red wing tips. And
I like his mask on his face.
Yeah.
Yes,
great
like a robber.
cosmetics, Really.
Even in the adults, you don't always see the red wax wing. So when you get a shot that shows it, it's much better
Yeah.
to help identify the bird. Although this bird is easy to identify anyway, but it's nice to see those red wax wings. So the places that I go to look for birds are mostly national wildlife refuges, like Plum Island is one. Mass Audubon sanctuaries. They're all over the state.
There's one very close to us,
What's it called?
helping people. It's in, Broadmoor? Yeah.
And local swamps. Local swamps that have no names. Get out Google Earth on your phone. I use Google Earth all the time. You look down for things that look like swamps. They could be dark green. They could be black looking. And when you see a swamp that you haven't been to, go and check it out. Most of the time when you go to a swamp, it's probably by now it's conservation land and you won't be trespassing on someone's private property. So go check out the swamps. And then if you have a Garmin and you find a swamp that has very productive in birds, save it into your Garmin. So all my locations in my Garmin are I've saved are local swamps, places that I found birds.
Do you go to trustees or reservations at all? Because sometimes it's hardly ever anyone there.
I may have been to a few, yeah, but none that I got as many birds at as I do at these kind of places.
The other thing nice about swamps in the spring is it's loaded with everything, flowers and all kinds of things. It's very active.
It is, yes, yeah.
It's just great to be there.
And when I was a kid, I would never dream that I would grow up and love to be in a swamp, but I spend most of my time, more than half of my time photographing is in a swamp.
And your mother was so glad.
My favorite is Plum Island. I always come back with a keeper from Plum Island, even if it's just a great blue heron in flight. That's been the most productive for me. So now that I have told you how I photograph birds and the techniques I use, I'm going to just give you a slideshow of all my favorite bird photographs. And if you want to make something epic, you just call it that. So these are going to be epic. We're going to go through, have some epic adventures together here. This is a double-crested cormorant sitting on a duck nest, some kind of, maybe a wood duck nest at Great Meadows in Concord. And
Sounds like you laid that all up, double-crested on.
double-crested cormorant. The reason I like this photograph is it reminds me of a Monet painting. But in fact, I didn't do any Photoshop filters or effects to this. It was a very windy day. So he's stationary and the grass is blowing back and forth, so it's sort of blurry and it gives that effect of if it was a painting. We're going to start off with raptors. The great horned owl is a raptor. Great horned owls, or all owls actually, are hard to find during the daytime because they're mostly nocturnal. So the best bet you have of photographing owls is to photograph baby owls. Baby owls that haven't flown away yet. It's like you have a captive bird. So he's just sitting up there like this guy. I like how he's beautifully framed by the thorns, as if they did that just for me. This was taken at Mount Auburn Cemetery about 2 or 3 years ago. A person in my camera club told me there was a pair of owls there, so I went to photograph them. Now, in this big giant cemetery, how would I ever find the little owl? Well, it was easy. There was about 50 or 60 birders all gathered around the nest, and equal number of photographers, and there was a yellow police line, do not cross, because they wanted to protect the nest from all the people that wanted to look at it. So very easy to find this great horned owl in the Mount Auburn Cemetery. In another cemetery in Andover, I found another great horned owl baby. So the moral of the story is go to cemeteries if you want to find owl. It's a true story. I've found also this year a small owl. What's it called? Yeah, little screech owl in a cemetery in Gardner, Massachusetts. The reason why birds like cemeteries is there's tall trees that they can sit in, and the grass is mowed nicely so they can easily pick off the chipmunks and squirrels. So it's a great place to be if you are a bird and you want to catch animals. This is a barred owl taken in Bolton. Notice how it's getting to be night. That's when they become active. It's also harder to take their pictures when it's dark. You have to be on a tripod. You have to have a higher ISO. And you're not going to get as sharp of a picture because it's almost nighttime. But I like this one anyway because it's my only picture of a bird taken when it was practically nighttime.
He's just looking at you saying, what?
He is.
It almost looks like his eyes are blinking.
Now I was fortunate to be able to see 2 baby barred owls in Royalston, Massachusetts. I have a cabin in the woods, and I was driving out the road earlier this year, and there were 2 baby barred owls that had been born, and they were sitting in a tree, and they were trying to talk. And it was the funniest thing, because they couldn't talk right. They were like, and my daughter recorded a video and audio of it, and they sound really funny. So,
You ever seen any great grays?
I never have. I'd like to, but don't you have to go out west?
There's one that comes down every year up near, what's the big reservoir?
Quabbin?
Wachusett?
No, Quabbin. Quabbin.
Oh, no, I've never seen it.
Yeah, he's up there. I've seen him about 5 years straight.
Wow. Great gray owl.
Yeah.
Where Quabbin is so big, what area?
Well, go through Quabbin, go to the next town. You'll hit a red light. Take a right at that red light and go up that road about 1.5 miles. And if he's there, there'll be, like you say, all kinds of cars. But he's big.
Yeah. I'd love to see one of those.
Oh, my God. Oh. Was he calling, talking?
I didn't have to wait for him to call. I knew what he was already. This is a snowy owl, and he had just coughed up a pellet. That's what owls do. They swallow their mouse, and then they cough up the fur and the bones. So he just coughed up a pellet. This is the first picture I ever took of a snowy owl. It was taken this winter. I'd never seen one that I had been able to photograph before.
The wood, the grass, everything is gorgeous.
Thank you. So he's sitting on a piece of driftwood at Salisbury Beach. Off to the right, after you go past the campgrounds, keep on going to the right, and there's a place where there's like the big triangle, big pyramid thing called the Needle. It's near there. Anyway, first time I ever saw a snowy owl was this year.
Oh,
He flew away. He smiled for me. This is the one time in my life that my wife was interested in birds because the snowy owl smiled and she likes this picture. Look at that. So the snowy owl was able to capture her heart. Then he, after he was sitting here in front of the rock, I told him I wanted to get something with less distractions. We talked about distractions. We got the rock going on here. So I asked the owl to go up on top of the rock. It's up there. He did. Now I was able to get just the sky and the grass behind him and get a much better picture of him. So when he went from here up onto the rock, I went out into the water, out into the ocean where he's wading in about a foot of water. And from that angle, I could take the shot and get just the sky behind him in the grass moving. And he was very happy to sit up there too, because from up here he can get a better angle on any animals that he's going to eat. This is the same snowy owl. I went back a week later. He was on the same piece of driftwood. It had snowed. If he's a snowy owl, you got to have snow. So I was very happy that the snow came, and I wished actually that the snow would come. So you can blame me for this winter and all the snow we had.
No, I like snow, so.
My fault. So he came and he sat on the piece of driftwood. Snowy owls, like most birds, are territorial. Even in his winter habitat where he spends the winter, he becomes territorial of his new habitat. So he probably wasn't more than 500 to 1,000 feet away from this piece of driftwood the whole time. And I found him again another time. I came back a week later. Salisbury Beach still, he had only moved about 400 or 500 feet away from that driftwood. And he was sitting on this rock near the shore. And I got there before the sun rose. And when the sun rose over the Atlantic, it lit him up on his piece of snow. And he was there waiting for me to come.
He
So
might
does
have
he
been,
live
right?
in a tree during the night? Or
Nope.
does he stay in that driftwood all day?
He was probably there all night long.
Really?
They don't seek shelter. They don't go roost in a tree like a lot of birds do.
And what
What
is a
keeps him
predator
protected?
for him?
I mean, it snows.
He has a lot of feathers, and he has feathers on his feet as well.
Ah,
Larger animals would want him for dinner or what?
Now, he doesn't have any predators to speak of unless you're up in the Arctic. He has the Arctic fox to watch out for, and that's about it. So he's pretty much top of the food chain. Although he can be, they have been eaten by fox too, so the fox and the snowy owls will eat each other. And I have a picture taken earlier this year of a fox that had a snowy owl that had caught and killed. But down here, they don't have to be worried that much.
And they don't become a problem of overpopulating?
Not that I'm aware of, no. So there he was sitting in the snow, undisturbed when the sun came up. And I like this shot because it was taken in the early morning, and it looks like sugar almost coating the rock.
look like a ghost. Whoa.
This is a shot that I took out of the window of my car at Salisbury Beach State Reservation. It was a very rainy day, cold, wet rain. I didn't want to take my camera out and photograph any snowy owls, although I saw the one by the driftwood. So I was getting ready to leave. I was driving out, and this one had just finished eating a mouse, so it wasn't flying away. So I stopped, and I rolled my window down and shot him out the window without getting my camera all wet. And one thing to keep in mind, if you are in your car and you see a bird, stay in your car. Your car is a natural bird blind. If you're in your car, the bird doesn't see you as a human. It just sees this big metal thing, maybe sees your face, but it's not scared of you so much if you're in your car. In fact, there's a wildlife refuge out in New York State on Route 90 called Montezuma National Wildlife Refuge. And they have a drive that you can go through that's about a mile long, mile or two. And you have to stay in your car the whole time. And the birds are used to people driving by, so if you stop and take a picture of them, they don't fly away. But if you get out of your car, those birds are gone, because I've seen people get out of their car, break the rules, and the bird that's walking along the road will disappear. So point of that is use your car as a bird blind if you can. That's how I got this shot. This photograph of the snowy owl was taken at Salisbury Beach, and he was sitting on the railing of the boardwalk. To get to the beach, you have to walk on the boardwalk. As I was coming back from the beach, I noticed the snowy owl on the boardwalk, and I didn't want to disturb him. So I went off into the dunes and walked past him. He didn't fly away. I was going past him about 30, 40 feet away, and he stayed there. I was able to get this close-up shot of him. I like this one because his eyes are open. You can see the sun shining in. Most of the shots that I've taken during the winter or that other photographers have taken, the snowy owl's eyes are half closed or completely closed. Because a lot of times what the snowy owl is doing is he's napping, he's resting. They hunt during the day and night, but oftentimes during the day, when you think they're active, they're not active at all, they're just sitting there. But this time he was on the hunt, and his eyes are open, ready to capture something. Someone asked earlier, where do they go to seek refuge and shelter? But they don't. This was taken during a snowstorm. I was the only one out. I was very happy about that. There was no one else to scare the owls away. And he just sat there on this lump as the snow came, and maybe about 6 inches came because I went back the next day. And he probably just spent the night there on that little dune in the snow.
These feathers must be incredible in terms of insulin.
Yeah, they are. This was taken at Plum Island on the dune. And if you go to Plum Island, they have signs that say stay off the dunes. So I shot this with a zoom lens from the other side of the sign. But I have seen people get tickets that cross over beyond the sign that says stay out, and you get a $100 fine. I saw it happen to a guy. So let that be a lesson to any of you thinking. It was a lesson to me when I saw the guy get the ticket. Not to approach the owls and not to go on the dunes because it does erode the dunes away. This snowy owl was shot as he was saying grace for his meal at Salisbury Beach. They have a campground there and a lot of posts all around, and the snowy owls like to sit on those posts. It gives them a little higher vantage point. They haven't learned what trees are for, because up in the Arctic they don't have trees. So they haven't figured that out, but at least they're smart enough to go up a couple feet up where they can get a better vantage point. What is he eating?
Yeah, what is that?
That's his foot.
I thought.
Yeah.
He's grooming.
He's got a lot of feathers on his foot. And here he is when he flew over my head. He was so close that I was not able to get the whole snowy owl. I was only able to get his head as he flew over. Now here I went to Rye Beach. Rye Beach is up in New Hampshire, and the snowy owl was sitting on the ice. Hard to see if you have never seen a snowy owl before, but I took a group of people there to photograph the snowy owl. We were almost to the beach, and I saw them off on the ice. And he looks like he's in his natural habitat, because up in the Arctic, it's probably very similar to this. And hard to spot. You have to look for a lump, whether he's sitting in the sand dune or the ice, just look for a lump with a rounded top. And it most likely is a snowy owl. When the snowy owls come south from the Arctic, the snow buntings also come south at the same time. These guys actually live farther north than the snowy owl does. Don't ask me how they survive up there. But it's pretty to see them when they come. They arrive in flocks, 40 or 50 in a flock, and they fly around crazy like tree swallows do. Very hard to photograph them because they're going every which way and they're going really fast. I was lucky enough, or actually I took 600 photographs enough that I got one where they were all sharp. They're all in the same plane too, so they're all in focus.
Wow.
We have a male and we have a female. Notice the markings are opposite.
Oh, yeah.
So one is the male, one is the female. I'm not sure which, but there they are all flying around, the snow bunting. And when they land, then you can get a nice picture of the snow bunting. Look how he blends in with that grass that he likes to eat. So I knew that if I wanted to get a picture of them, 2 weeks later there was a huge snowstorm and there was 2 feet of snow in Newburyport, which doesn't usually happen. Usually we get the snow and they don't get much, but there was so much snow that most of the grass was gone. So I perched myself near the grass, this little piece, behind a dune and waited for the birds to come because there wasn't much grass to get and I knew they had to come towards me. So he came in, he sat down in the snow and ate his little seed, gave me a nice photo op.
Nice.
So I sat near his food source and that's how I was able to get the photograph of the snow bunting. Another raptor, since we were talking about raptors and owls, is the bald eagle. This was taken at Wachusett Reservoir. There is a nest at the Wachusett Reservoir. And this was taken from Shoalin Point, which is a little peninsula there. This was taken of an eagle flying over Muddy Pond in Sterling. I had 2 of them fly over me while I was there. There's lots of birds there at Muddy Pond, and seeing an eagle is always fun. And I was dressed in my camouflage clothes photographing a great blue heron when he flew over, so he did not see me. If he had seen me, he would have been long gone. Eagles don't like people. The second he saw me, he was out of there. He almost took a sharp right turn and just flew off. So it's funny that the animal that you would think would be the most not scared of humans is one actually is very scared of humans. If you're within like 500 feet of them, they are not happy. This was at the Quabbin Reservoir, another bald eagle flying over. Most of my eagle shots are in flight because you can't really get too close to eagles. They don't like getting close to you. Except for this one, which was taken up in Acadia National Park. Is that part of Massachusetts?
No.
But Maine
We
was.
wish.
The original colony of Massachusetts had Maine, so this counts. I was driving along the road and the bald eagle landed in a tree right beside the road, so I pulled on the emergency brake and we all came to a sudden stop. And I had a point and shoot camera with me at that time. I turned on the camera, set everything to automatic, everything, before I even rolled down the window because I figured the eagle would fly away. I rolled down the window and stuck my head out the window and I got one shot of him and he flew away.
It's a good shot.
It was a lucky shot that I got because usually with a point and shoot you don't get good results. But it was a sunny day and the eagle was close. This is a northern harrier, also known as a marsh hawk. They like to fly low over the marsh. That's how you can identify them, and also by their coloring. They have a more orange color than a normal hawk. And this was taken at Plum Island near Hellcat Tower. You can quite often see them at Plum Island or other places that have a marsh. And they will hover almost like a helicopter. When the wind comes, and the wind's going at the right speed, they can almost hover like a helicopter over the marsh and pick off the animals that are down there. In fact, we have, in the military, we have a jet called the Harrier jet. It gets its name from this helicopter-like bird. It can take off from without a runway. Here it is again. And here's one taken at Sandy Point at the tip of Plum Island. In the background, you have Cranes Beach. You can see him just hovering right low over the marsh. This is another raptor. This is the osprey. I love to photograph the osprey. They're a big bird, and you don't have to have a big of a zoom lens. You can get good pictures of them from far away. This one was flying over the swamp along Route 2. Here he is again. I came to learn this osprey because he has a broken wing, and I saw him several times. I knew it was the same bird. The reason why this is so sharp from this wingtip to that wingtip is because he's also perpendicular to the camera as he is flying. So I took advantage of that. I got the whole bird sharp as he flew. And here he is coming in for landing at the nest site along Route 2. He didn't have a fish. His wife said, "Go back and catch me a fish, will you?" So he went back and caught a fish.
It's a colorful fish.
Looks like a catfish or something. Very heavy. This actually wasn't the same osprey, but this osprey was shot at Delaney Wildlife Management Area on Route 117 in Stowe. If you're ever driving along and see the brown sign with the binoculars that says Wildlife Viewing Area, stop and investigate. That's how I found this place. Ospreys, grapefruit herons, and other things were there. When I saw the ospreys fishing that day that I first found it, I decided to come back the next day and see if I could catch them, diving and catching the fish. And he did catch a fish, but it was on the far side of the swamp from me. I was next to the boat ramp, and he was about 1,000 feet away. He caught the fish. He went up in the air, and I said to him, "Will you come over here so I can take your picture?" And he did. He flew right towards me, and he allowed me to get the picture of him flying with the fish. Then he circled around 2 or 3 times to make sure I got all the pictures I wanted, and then he flew off. That doesn't usually happen. It was my lucky day. The red-tailed hawk is another bird I like to photograph. This one was taken along a random road in Concord, and he was sitting in a tree along the side of the road. I was with my friend, and she said, "Look at the hawk in the tree. Let's photograph it." And I said, "No, it'll fly away." Because the last 3 times I stopped to photograph a hawk in a tree, it flew away. So to prove it to her, I said, "Watch this." So I got out of the car. He didn't fly away. I slammed the door, and he didn't fly away. We got our cameras out, and he still didn't fly away. Why didn't he fly away?
He was full.
No? What?
He couldn't fly?
He was looking for food. So he was on the hunt. And he was looking on the other side of the road where there was a farmer's field, and he had his eye on looking for a mouse. So for 20 minutes, he stayed right there. And we photographed him. People drove by, walked by, bicycles went by, and the hawk did not fly away. So that's when you want to take advantage of the opportunity when you see a hawk that appears to be on the hunt. After about 20 minutes, I decided that the hawk was eventually going to dive for his meal. So I locked on to the hawk with my focus. You press the shutter halfway down, it focuses on the bird. For 5 minutes, I waited with my finger pressed halfway down on the shutter. Because once he flies, you don't have a chance to focus on him as he's diving, because they dive at up to 120 miles an hour. So I waited and waited, and 5 minutes went by, and he dove.
Wow.
He went into his dive to catch that little mouse, and he caught the mouse, and I caught him. I was able to pan with him all the way down. I got about 7 shots of him, and this one I actually got the whole hawk in the frame instead of just a wingtip.
I love the
Fierceness, look at the fierceness in his face.
He does.
Determination.
He has determination.
But it's also,
Yeah. So he,
thinking of the composition, the V-like form of the cloud in the background.
so I was lucky to, that's my once-in-a-lifetime shot of a hawk going into a dive, because you don't usually see that. And if you do, you usually aren't able to lock onto it. So you got to lock onto him before he actually goes into the dive. This is a young red-tailed hawk taken at Plum Island. And this one kind of hangs around the welcoming sign. He's sitting on the Welcome to Plum Island sign. So I actually photographed this before I even went in. The toll booth operator said, "Are you going to pay and come in?" And I said, "Why should I pay and come in when the bird is sitting on the sign?" So I actually got these pictures from outside of the Plum Island Visitor Center.
They say he gets paid 50 fish a day for sitting there.
He gets paid to bring the people in, doesn't he? Yeah, 50 fish a day. Here's another red-tailed hawk. If you see a bird that's preening itself, like this one is preening itself, he's happy and he's content, and he's probably not going to fly away anytime soon. I've seen it over and over again. This hawk was here for another half an hour, so I got all the pictures I wanted of him. I'd preen myself if I looked that good too. Here's the hawk giving me a stare down. This one had already eaten. He wasn't going anywhere, and he was wondering why I was standing there taking his picture. Another close-up of a hawk. I don't shoot any pictures that are in captivity. This is a hawk that I was actually very close to. The one at Plum Island that was on the sign flew off the sign down into a little tree right next to my car, so I was able to get a real close-up shot of the red-tailed hawk. A different red-tailed hawk, this one was at a baseball field in my town of Lancaster. My daughter texted me from school on her phone. You're not supposed to do that at school, but her teacher gave her permission. And she said the hawk was out in the field and it was eating something. So I got in my car and I drove right down there, and the hawk, as you can see, had a rabbit. And he is sitting on the rabbit and he's eating it. So I was able to approach the hawk and get about 15 feet away. I crawled along on my stomach in the wet grass here until I was this close. And the whole time, the school, all the people were watching me out the window. The teachers and the students, and the teacher that taught my daughter's class asked me to come in and give a bird presentation. So I showed all the pictures of the hawks to the kids so they could see what I had been shooting. And I got this close-up of the hawk. I eventually got so close I had to back up because my camera won't focus closer than 14 feet. You can see he's hasn't wiped off his face yet. He's got little rabbit guts. But that's what hawks do. This red-tailed hawk was shot in Amherst. I was on my way to a photography conference in a small part of the town, actually before Amherst. I came to an intersection, the red light, and I saw the red-tailed hawk there, like he was going to go down. So I put my car into park in the middle of the intersection, and I got out and I photographed the hawk. He came down to pounce on his dead prey. It's just roadkill. So he came down to look at it. Meanwhile, the cars are driving by. No one ever stopped. Even a jogger never stopped to see, what are you photographing? Hopefully, if you guys see somebody with a camera, you're going to stop and look and find out what they're photographing and take the same picture. But nobody did. The hawk was looking at the squirrel, and he was wondering if he should eat it. He looked at me and said, "Should I eat it?" I said, "I don't know, but I wouldn't eat it." So I told him I wouldn't eat it, so he eventually flew off and left the squirrel there. But he gave me a nice shot before he went. He went over to a place where I got this nice framing going on around the bird. If you can frame a bird with some branches or leaves, go ahead and take that opportunity. This is a hawk called the Cooper's hawk. And the Cooper's hawk that I have seen like to come in the wintertime. This came during snowstorm Nemo about 2 winters ago. So I called this Cooper's hawk Nemo. And he's sitting on the swing set, my daughter's swing set. And the reason he's there is my neighbor has a bird feeder.
Wow, yes.
Cooper's hawk love to eat birds. And this winter, another Cooper's hawk came back, probably the same one, during another snowstorm. And he was eating a cardinal on the back deck.
Oh, gross.
But that's how it is. If you want Cooper's hawks, you got to give up some of your birds.
Some of, I'm not giving up any of my birds. No, I'm kidding.
That's what isn't that beautiful?
This is a great egret taken at Plum Island in the salt pans on the side of the road. Very easy shot to get. Just parked my car and took the shot of him admiring himself. We like to think the birds are admiring themselves, right? They're hunting, but
I was gonna say,
makes a good picture with the reflection there.
look at that, how beautiful that is.
And here is an egret and an egret, not an egret rookery, but an egret place where they go to roost. And it was taken in Salisbury on Route 1. There's about 60 or 70 egrets there. I met a person out photographing and he told me where to find it. So we went and there was about 5 or 6 photographers with big giant lenses. So I knew I was in the right place. I see people like that. And it was fun to watch them come in to roost at night. They come in for a landing, but unlike a great blue heron, which comes in gracefully, these things come in and they fly erratically, almost as if they think someone's trying to shoot them down out of the sky and they're trying to evade being shot down. So it's very hard to photograph them because you don't know which way they're going to turn. And they land in the tree and they all have a fight and they try to scare the other great egret off the branch that he's sitting on. So it's fun to watch egrets roosting, coming in to roost. And this was taken at that place along Route 1 in Salisbury. During the spring, it's fun to watch the great blue herons build or rebuild their nests. And this one is coming in with a branch for his mate. She puts her neck up in the air so that she can receive the stick. And if you watch them do it, they do it very gingerly when they pass the baton, so to speak. And the reason why they do it very gingerly, I learned this spring as I was studying some great blue herons at a rookery that I found in Harvard, is because you don't want to drop the stick. It's a long ways down. And I watched what maybe looked like a new couple building a nest, because they got a late start compared to all the other herons. And he was passing the stick off to his mate, and they dropped it. And it went down, and they both looked down. Like that. They did. They were like, no. So that's why they do it so gingerly. Most of the time, they are successful passing the stick. They do it like that.
Oh, look at that.
And then the female will take the stick and force it in and build the nest that way.
It looks like they're making like a V. You know, like the nest is,
Yeah, they want to start with some branches that make a V and then stuff all the twigs in there. Yep. Here's a view you don't often see. This is underneath the heron. You don't want to stay under there for too long because you could get white real fast. This is the view probably the fish see right before they get eaten. But this was taken at a heron rookery in Concord, Massachusetts, next to the Sleepy Hollow Cemetery. On your way to Great Meadows, about a half a mile before you get to Great Meadows, there's a cemetery and there's a rookery, or a swamp that has a bunch of trees kind of blown down. It's a very ugly place to look at, but the herons have taken up residence there, and they're probably the same group that used to be on Route 2. There's a whole bunch of them there. And you can walk right up to the nests and stand right underneath them. Here's one at that same rookery, going out on a limb on a very windy day. See how the wind is blowing his hair all around. But somehow they managed to hang on. I don't know how birds hang on like that, but they do. Then you go back during about a month later, and the babies have hatched, and the mother will come and feed the babies, and the babies go nuts when the mother shows up with a fish. They just almost attack her because they want to be the first one to be fed. And it's survival of the fittest. I've seen, especially last year I saw a dead one, and this year I actually was able to videotape some of the siblings killing off another one. If a mother has 4 babies, quite often that's too many to feed, and so the 3 strongest ones will kill that other one. More food for them. And then you have healthier babies that survive. This is an Arctic tern, and it flies all the way from the Arctic, and it has the largest migration of any bird in the world. 40,000 miles it goes from the North Pole to the South Pole.
And
or from the Arctic to the Antarctic. That's the north to south.
Yeah.
And then back again. This was photographed at the tip of Sandy Point on Plum Island. There was a whole flock of them there, so I was able to get one by itself. But that poor bird has to fly 40,000 miles in 1 year. I don't know how he does it. This is a wading bird that was taken at Plum Island, and he's got quite a big fish in his mouth. I put this on Facebook a while ago, maybe a year or two ago, and one of my friends who was like an ornithologist kind of guy, he looked at the picture and he said, "How did that bird ever swallow that fish?" Well, he was right. It actually didn't swallow the fish. I don't know how he knew that it couldn't, but I have 70 frames that prove that it didn't. He kept trying to swallow that fish. He'd throw it up in the air, he'd drop it in the water, try to put it down at a different angle. You can see here he almost got it down. He tried very hard. I have another picture where his eyes are actually bugging out as he's trying to swallow that fish. But it took him quite a while before he finally, it dawned on him that he could not swallow it. So they try anyway. If you go to Plum Island, especially Sandy Point, you can see the plovers. They're protected, but they don't always stay in their yellow line. They can't read. They come out of their space and they walk along on the beach. And they're a very interesting bird to photograph. They're almost tame. They don't seem to fear you. They'll approach you and they're curious. And if you're laying down in the sand, they will come closer to you and find out what you're all about. And if you go back during the nesting season, you can find the little baby as well. People call them marshmallows on a toothpick. That's about how big they are. And if this one hadn't moved, I wouldn't have seen it. I mean, you can see it now, but if you're actually there walking along the beach and this little guy is not moving, you won't see him. He blends right in. And that's about his only camouflage, or his only defense is his camouflage, that he blends in with the sand.
Do you happen to know if they're mature after 1 year, or how long it takes?
For them to be mature? I do not know, but one thing that's interesting about the Killdeers and the piping plovers is they're called precocial birds. When they hatch out of their egg, they're ready to run. They hatch and they run around and they get their own food. Most birds are in the nest and mom feeds them, dad feeds them. But this one could have been hatched that same day, and it's running around already. It kind of hangs around with the mother, but it eats on its own and it runs around from day one. These birds don't have much of a defense. That's why they are protected with the yellow police line do not cross. And they also put little cages around them that look almost like a rabbit cage. Once they've had their eggs laid in the nest, to keep the predators like the raccoons and the foxes from eating them. I don't like to put up pictures of birds that aren't doing anything. Like I said earlier, it's got to be active. Well, what's this bird doing? He's a killdeer, but he's distracting me. That's what he's doing right now. His nest is way over there, probably a couple 100 feet away. So whenever you see the killdeer, don't go to where the killdeer is to try to find the nest and the babies. Go somewhere else. Watch where he came from and watch where he goes to. So he's busy in the process of distracting me right now. And he actually saw me arrive on the scene long before I saw him. If you ever see a killdeer, you can guarantee he saw you long ago. So just back off, go about 500, 1,000 feet away, and then carefully watch and wait to see where he goes back to, and you can find his nest.
Sometimes they pretend they have a broken wing. or something.
They do.
Yeah.
And they'll get you to follow the broken wing. So here he is. I went back and I found out where the babies were. And they did an interesting activity when they wanted to call their babies for protection, because I was there, made some kind of a sound. And all the babies came running and went underneath the wings. And 4 of them came. They all got underneath the wings there. And then when she felt it was safe, she made another sound or movement, and they all dispersed and went back to the sand and hid again. So interesting birds to watch, the killdeer. Here's a killdeer in flight. A lot of birds are more interesting in flight because you can see different markings on them than you would normally. Like if they were sitting there, they're not quite as pretty as if they're flying. Hard to get a picture of a killdeer in flight because they go very fast and they move crazy. So you have to pan with the bird. You have to lock onto him and then follow him as he's flying.
About how big?
Is a killdeer? Like size of a robin, or a little smaller. Maybe.
I think we've seen some at Great Meadows.
This is a least tern. The least tern is a bird that nests along with the piping plover, the same area. The piping plover, I said earlier, doesn't really have a defense. other than as camouflage. But the least tern, he's not happy to see you, and he'll chase you away. This one is marching at me, and he literally is.
Mad.
He's mad. He's angry. He's coming at me, telling me to leave, which I did. And they will dive bomb you too. I've photographed eagles, hawks, ospreys, and owls, and I've never been scared of being dive bombed by any of those. But this guy here will come right at you, and you are scared.
How big is he?
He's the size of a little gull. Well, not a gull. He's the size of a robin, maybe.
Yeah.
But he's a feisty guy, and he does not want you to be near his eggs. What would you call a ruddy-looking bird that turned over all the stones? Anybody?
It's a turn.
It's a ruddy turnstone. The ruddy turnstone is a shorebird, but most pretty when it's in flight. When it's just sitting there on the ground, it looks like a brown blob. So I got him in flight at Muddy Pond. So try to get birds in flight also makes an interesting picture. We have our obligatory cute little baby geese. They're only cute for about 2 weeks. They're bright yellow, and they start to fade. They lose their colors. So shoot them while you can. Here's a bunch of them bobbing along in the Hellcat Tower, the pool next to the Hellcat Tower. Here's the geese when they grow up. This was at Bolton Flats. Look at this one. That's a funny looking goose. And I didn't do a Photoshop trick. This is a real photograph. You'd think he was flying in formation with the geese. But it just happened that all the birds in the field flew up and took off, and the seagull crossed paths with the flock, so it looked like he was in the flock. So there you go. Right. And here's a nice little family taken at Muddy Pond on the backside. I like this one because it has the pretty colors reflected. So even if you don't have pretty colors in a pond, you can, if you have something on the opposite shore that can make a nice reflection, go for it. Some more geese flying at the Hellcat Tower right over the dike there. Some more ducks flying in Lancaster at a pond near my house. Try to get them in flight. Here's a swan. Swans are hard to photograph because they're so white. You can get overexposure problems. But this guy was very cooperative, and I had to underexpose the picture. That's why the blue water is a little bit dark. But swans are pretty easy to get, especially if you go to Marlborough. There's some that are almost tame. Along Route 20 there, they'll come up to the shore because they probably get fed. Interesting fact about a swan is they are one of the heaviest birds in the world. They can weigh up to 30 pounds. So you don't often see swans flying, do you? Most of the time you think about it, they're always floating along in the water. Well, if you weighed 30 pounds, it would take a lot of effort to get up there. So they choose to float. Here's one that decided to fly. At Plum Island, I was at the Hellcat Tower, and 2 swans took off and flew past me. It takes them 90 feet just to get going. And when they do go, you can hear them. They make a loud noise. They're not very graceful at all. You can hear the swan's wings flying from about a mile away. That's how long you can hear them. They're not very graceful flyers. They kind of look funny when they're flying.
What do they do to protect themselves?
Oh, they have a strong beak, and they'll hit you with their wingtips too. I've heard people get hurt by swans. And here's a little tidbit that a lot of people don't know. If you are a swan and you live in England, you are owned by the Queen. The Queen owns all the swans. The loon is a bird that you can see on Wachusett Reservoir and Quabbin Reservoir, places where there's not a lot of motorboats. Go up to Maine and New Hampshire too and find a secluded lake, and you'll probably be able to see a loon. This one is sitting on just a little patch of rocks, a small little island along Route 140 about 2 years ago. Have you ever seen a loon walking? No, loons can't walk. So he built his nest, or she built his nest right next to the edge where it could kind of hop up, scoot itself up onto the nest. But they fly and swim really good, especially swim, but they don't walk.
They're great divers, though.
They are. They can swim really fast. This loon was taken on Lake Winnipeg in Ashburnham, which is amazing because there's a lot of motorboats on Lake Winnipeg and Ashburnham. So this was the exception to the rule. Usually they prefer quiet lakes. I like this one. It looks like he's getting ready to take off, doesn't it? But he's not. He's just He's just drying off his wings after a long dive. And if you watch loons for quite a while and wait, you can get them doing this kind of
They hide
flapping their wings.
Because they don't have the protective wings. They go like this. Is that the cormorant?
That's the cormorant, yeah.
I think that's why they dry out.
This guy was just shaking off his feathers because he had just done a dive. The kingfisher is a bird that's fun to see. Very elusive bird. You can't get very close to a kingfisher. Most of the time you see one, they're on the other side of a swamp. And they're diving and catching a fish. But I was lucky enough to get one about 50 feet away only one time. This was taken in Salisbury at a swamp. I was set up near this snag here, and I was just hoping that he would come and land on it. And he did. And he even brought a fish that he had just caught. They're amazing fishermen. He went down into the swamp about a dozen times, and every time he came up with a fish. Osprey can't do that. Osprey catch a fish maybe every 1 in 3. But the kingfisher, I guess that's why they call him the kingfisher, because he's totally accurate and catches his fish.
And how big is he?
He's the size of a blue jay.
My God.
Sometimes when you see them flying, you can mistake him for a blue jay as that flash goes by. But you want to listen for their call. They have a very distinctive shriek. And they give themselves away all the time. They're always chattering around. And you can just be sitting there and you'll hear that sound and look around and you see that bird flying by. He's always making his call.
Nice picture.
This is the hooded merganser. Is that the right? Or is that common merganser? Any birder people here?
I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's a hooded merganser. Got that white patch. I don't have any pictures of it on the ground. I have a picture of it flying. They're a very elusive bird too. If you see them in a swamp or a pond, they're usually on the other side. They don't like people. That was taken up in Tully River in Royalston. The bluebird has caught a grub. That's what they love to eat. When you see them in a tree or a branch and they go down to the grass and they fly back up, they're going down there to catch a grub. This was taken right along the side of Route 2 in Leominster, Massachusetts. I was out there to try to photograph a great blue heron, and I noticed the bluebird catching his meal. A lot of people put these mealyworms in their bird feeders and get the bluebirds to come because they love to eat these grubby things. Here he is checking out the spot. If you put up a bluebird house, you can often get bluebirds to come to your neighborhood. And you have to try to fight off the sparrows, chase them away so the bluebirds will come. Here he is sitting, posing nicely because he knows he's about to go on the cover of a magazine. And he did. He went on the cover of a magazine
Congratulations.
called New England Printer and Publisher. This guy is a curious one. A lot of birds will look at your lens. Maybe they see a reflection. They think it's themselves or another bird. I like this bluebird better than the other one here because it has the man-made object in it. I like to get birds that are just sitting on a regular perch.
Look at the different shades of blue in them.
Yeah, this is the male. He's a lot brighter than the female. This is the female, but in this particular day in the sun, she looks pretty bright too. So photograph both of them. See how he has a bright blue head and she doesn't? But they're still both pretty.
What strikes me about your photography is you capture things that you would not see with your own eyes. You just wouldn't catch a lot of them.
Yeah, once you get a zoom lens, you can get a lot closer and get more detail. Photographing cardinals, if you've ever tried, is not easy. They always seem to flit around and they don't ever sit still at the bird feeder. This one was sitting there for 10 minutes at the Mount Auburn Cemetery, singing away. So I took the opportunity to photograph this cardinal. The way that I found him is I listened and I heard his call. A blue jay is another bird that's hard to photograph if you've ever tried it. They are a pest at the bird feeder because they scare the other birds away. And people don't seem to like blue jays, but they're a beautiful bird. If you lived in another country and never saw one, look at how beautiful it is with all the blue. So this is the only shot I ever did where I set up the shot ahead of time. I got my camera ready and I had the perch ready. Nice framing going on, and I waited for the blue jay to come. And he did. How do you attract the blue jay for the picture? Someone told me the secret, so I put the peanuts out along the railing of my deck. My deck was right below. The railing of my deck was right down here. So the blue jay came and I got that picture of him. Bribed him with peanuts. This is a bird that likes to nest underneath the eaves or in an old deserted cabin. and it's called the eastern Phoebe. It's one of the first birds to arrive in the spring, and it has a pretty song. Or it can be an annoying song if you're building a cabin in the woods and it never stops. And it never stopped. And it fought me every day as I was building my cabin in the woods, and it kept putting its nest above the window or under the eaves. Actually, inside the cabin, as the cabin was getting done, he would start building his nest in the cabin, and I had to chase him out repeatedly. And every morning when I'd come to work at my cabin, I would scrape the mud off where he had started his nest. When I came back the next day, he would start his nest again. So he didn't give up. As you can see, he won. He's got his nest. And he had 2 little babies there 2 years ago. This year he was back again, or she was back again. Had a clutch of babies, and then about a couple of weeks later, another group of babies in the same nest. A lot of birds will have 2 or 3 broods a year. This is the eastern Phoebe. I like him a lot better because he's not building a nest in my cabin. He's out in the woods. Right. But they're not a real pretty bird, but they do have a pretty call. And these are the eastern Phoebes taken out of the Oxbow National Wildlife Refuge in Still River. I was in a photo blind that they built out there, and I was able to photograph these guys that were about 15 feet away. I shot right out the photo blind. They didn't really see me. They are telling me to go away, though. Get lost. This is just a regular sparrow. I don't know what kind. Song sparrow, probably. But in order to get into my slideshow, at least you have to be doing something. And so he obliged me, and he decided to eat a couple inchworms. Another ordinary bird, the catbird. I like the way he's sitting on this stump here, though. And they make a beautiful call. They're like a mockingbird. They do all the mimicking of other birds. And they also mimic a cat. So that's why they're called the catbird. This is a little baby bird I found in Concord. I was looking for birds. This was at the edge of a cornfield. You can see the corn stalk. You can see he's quite a tiny little bird. Can anybody identify the bird?
Robin.
Good guess. They all look the same, though, when they're little, don't they? The only way I could tell what it was, it's not a robin, it's a chipping sparrow, because the mother came along and fed it. And this is a little baby chipping sparrow. So I wouldn't expect anybody to be able to identify this poor little bird without seeing its mother.
Looks like a mohawk.
Here's another bird that would be hard to identify if you didn't see the parent flying along with it like I did. I didn't know what kind of bird it was, but I noticed, look at the beak. I noticed that as it was flying around, and I was at a pond where there's lots of those bulrushes or cattails. The parent was flying around. It looked like it was chasing this bird. Why does it keep chasing this poor little bird? It was actually teaching it to fly. It was flying like a triangle from one tree to another, to a branch and back again. And it was teaching the little bird how to fly. And that's the parent there.
Oh my God.
So that's a red-winged blackbird. That's what they look like when they're born. Yep. And if they're an adult, that's how the females look like. But when they're little, they all look like that.
You can identify them so easily by their sound.
Yeah, well, yeah, and the only way I knew what this was because I saw it with its parent. This is a red-winged blackbird that's looking right at my lens intently, trying to find out who the other blackbird is looking back at it. Baltimore Oriole doing the same thing, staring me down, probably seeing a reflection of itself. That was taken on this rail trail in Sterling, Massachusetts. Here are some of my favorite birds, the cedar waxwing. See, they look like little robbers with that mask going on. They like to eat these crab apples. And they will sometimes toss them up in the air to have them go down at a better angle.
We'll pass them back and forth.
I haven't seen that.
Yeah,
We've
they'll pass
seen them
them
do
on.
that, yeah.
Will they?
Yeah.
The male to the female?
They
Yeah.
go back right along the branch, if there's 3 or 4 of them.
Really?
They'll just pass them right along.
That would be cool
Are
to
they
see.
trying to pass them down the tree or
Yeah.
something?
Wow. So this one, the reason I like this shot better is it doesn't have the distracting background, see?
Yeah.
I waited for him to go up to the top of the tree where he just has the sky behind him.
Looks like a painting.
So wait, thank you. So wait until it goes up to the top of the tree, and then you just get the bird and the berries. And this one was tossing it up in the air to get it to go down a different angle. It looks like they are playing volleyball, but they really don't know how. Also come along is a flock of robins was at the same tree. And the robins and the cedar waxwing did not fight. They coexisted in perfect harmony. And they both enjoyed the same fruit. I don't know if this robin was able to actually get that down. It looks pretty large, but he gave it a try. And I only thought robins ate worms, but they'll eat crab apples as well. This is a tree swallow. And a tree swallow doesn't get a lot of, people don't photograph him very much because he doesn't look as cool, but I think they do. Look at the way his coat shines. The feathers shine really right if the sun is hitting it just right. Tree swallow. Here's a couple of tree swallows mating at Swamp in Concord. Here is a bird that has just conked himself out of the window. He hit the sliding glass window and conked himself out. So me and my daughter ran outside after we heard the thud to photograph the poor dead bird. What kind of bird is it?
Cedar wax.
You can tell by the yellow tips of his wings right here. So this poor unfortunate.
Did he die or just was he unconscious?
Good question. Did he die or was he unconscious? He came back to life in about 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And my daughter was able to get pictures with her iPhone, and so was I.
Did you give him an aspirin? He
No,
probably had a headache.
he probably did.
You need to put something on your windows.
Yeah.
Yeah, like stripes or ribbons or
Yeah,
something.
little pictures.
So he got up. This shot was right before he flew away. Cedar waxwing.
Oh, look at that.
This is a bird on the nest, a yellow warbler. This was taken at Bolton Flats in Lancaster, right around May, where they're building their nest. Another bird here is the pileated woodpecker shot at a swamp on Dover Road in Concord. And what he's doing is he's listening to the tree to see if he can hear the bugs crawling around inside. He came back to the spot several times. It was his favorite spot. Probably there's a lot of bugs, maybe a nest colony in there.
Even so.
And here he is on the side of the tree. The pileated woodpecker is like a foot long, a very fun bird to see and to photograph. I've met people, some birders who have never seen one. I was at Great Meadows watching other birds, and a guy comes along and asks me, where is the pileated woodpecker? He had never seen one. He was trying to find one.
They use their back tail like a stool. It helps them.
Oh, yeah. Help them balance.
Yeah.
Red-bellied woodpecker. This was taken in Worcester, Massachusetts at a place called Broadmoor or Broadmeadow, Mass Audubon place. Broadmeadow. And he's at his nest. This is another red-bellied woodpecker shot in Leominster, Massachusetts. A friend of mine told me there was a nest there. I went to photograph it. I waited half an hour. I heard the call. The bird came, poked its head in, and out poked its head was a flying squirrel. So this is a once-in-a-million shot I will never get again, because it just so happened the flying squirrel had just taken over the nest a little while before I came.
That's funny.
The flying squirrels will eat the eggs or the young and take over. So that was the end of the red-bellied woodpecker nest in that tree. And I happened to capture that moment where they both, in shock, met each other.
Oh, that almost looks.
I didn't even know what had happened, because when I saw it happen, I couldn't tell what was going on. It wasn't until I got to my computer and I said, there's another animal in there. And I thought it looked like a chinchilla.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But chinchillas don't live in a tree. So I had to do some research, and somebody told me that's a flying squirrel.
I've never seen a flying squirrel.
I have never either. That's the only one I've ever seen. But they will take over nests of other birds and eat their babies. This is a yellow-bellied sapsucker. And I was able to find this because a friend of mine was up on Mount Wachusett with his son. The son texted my daughter, said, there is a yellow-bellied sapsucker on a tree at Mount Wachusett on the Mountain House Trail, 500 feet up from the road. Go past the log that fell down, and in a tree, 12 feet up, there'll be a hole. And it was all true. I went right there, and just as he said, there was the yellow-bellied sapsucker. And every 3 minutes, the parent would come back and feed the babies who were in there. I realized when I got home that there was actually 2 that I was photographing, and I thought it was 1. But they came every 3 minutes.
Ah,
The male, and then the female, and then the male, and then the female. They look very similar, but the female has a white part right here, and the male has red right there. And I found out that the yellow-bellied sapsucker babies do not like dragonfly, because the next shot, when I looked at them later, was the yellow-bellied sapsucker exiting with the dragonfly still in its mouth. Because the bird goes right in the hole, feeds the young, and it came back out with the dragonfly. So that's something they don't like. This is the crossing guard. Every place has a crossing guard. And this is taken at Plum Island. Last year, or the year before, was when the turkeys first came to Plum Island. And now you can see them walking all over the place. They're very tame. And this one was actually very stupid. But they're not hunted there, so they know they're safe. And this one just stood.
Much prettier than the ones I have on my front lawn. They're scaly.
It is. This is the first time I've ever seen a turkey do the display thing. He's got his feathers up. He's either showing off to the other females that were there, or he's giving me a warning to back off. And all the cars that came had to go around the turkey, because he stayed there right in the middle of the crosswalk. This is the bird you don't often see, and I've never seen one since, and it's an American woodcock. They like to go along on the ground and hide in the underbrush, so they're very hard to see. The only reason I was able to see this one was due to the unfortunate circumstances where the mother was run over by a car and killed. I saw the babies running around, and I looked up the street, and there was a flattened mother roadkill. The babies probably didn't figure that out because the mother had been flattened. So they're running all in the bushes and all back and forth across the road looking for the mother. And that's how I was able to get the shot of the American woodcock. Another rare bird, the Virginia rail. I'm a bird photographer. I'm not looking for rare birds, but every now and then I find one. And the Virginia rail was shot at Great Meadows. There's trails that go all around there. And I was looking down for black snakes, and that's how I happened to see the Virginia rail cross the path, and then it was gone. Never saw it again. There. This is the ruby-throated hummingbird at the feeder. I generally, when I shoot photographs, I don't like to get the bird feeder or anything man-made in it. So just crop in on the hummingbird and you get a much better shot. Unless you're doing a hummingbird feeder brochure, that would be a great shot. But I like to get just the bird. And to shoot a hummingbird, you got to get a pretty fast shutter speed. Like 1/1500th of a second is what I had here. If you could shoot it at 1/2000th or 1/3000th of a second, you could probably stop the motion. But I like to get just a little bit of blurring going on to show movement. Because if he's perfectly still, it doesn't even look like he's flying. This is the same ruby-throated hummingbird as before, but look at his ruby throat. Depending on how the sun strikes it, it will look like a ruby-throated hummingbird or not. Same bird. And I'm going to end this talk with my favorite picture. This is the snowy owl over the dunes at Salisbury Beach. This is my best-selling photograph of the snowy owl. And he's got a 5-foot wingspan. So when he came up over the dunes, I was ready for him. And I was very lucky that the wind was blowing, and he kind of hovered there right in front of me. So I was able to get a couple pictures of him hovering. So that ends my show, and thank you all for coming. And if you have any questions,
Do you have a website?
go ahead and ask. peterchristoph.com.